Hi y'all, Learnology here, and I just have a quick question for you. Do I deserve a second chance? You know, for that really bad thing that I did a few years ago. And be honest, do you? You know, for that really bad thing that you did that you'd prefer not to discuss with your newfound friends. I wonder. Because I think most of us believe that we do deserve one. Most individuals do not perceive themselves to be solely their worst action. You know, we can recognize that it's a big part of us and we can have deep shame for it, but I think we also understand that our lives are very complex, long, and nuanced, and most importantly, always with the capacity for growth and change. That's at least what we like to preach when it comes to self-help when faced with things like failure and regret. We are told to take our negative experiences, see the value in it, and use it as a tool for growth, for becoming a better person. We talk about having compassion for ourselves and empathetic honesty in order to grow from things like shame. And in doing so, we recognize ourselves as being complicated, as people that have made bad mistakes, of course, but mistakes that should not define us. But it's interesting how that belief manages to almost completely disappear once it is turned outwards. You know, once someone else does something that we find to be unforgivable. So I want to talk about the drama with y'all today. Because this movie has created a wonderful avenue for some conversations that I have been wanting to have for the longest time, but I just really didn't know how to. So the drama is directed by Christopher Borgli and stars Robert Pattinson and Zendaya, who play a couple, Charlie and Emma, who are a week before their wedding. And one night, while sampling wines, them and two other friends of theirs all go around the room and share the worst thing that they have ever done. And at first, of course, it is uncomfortable, but manageable. So Mike starts by telling a story about how he hid behind his girlfriend at the time when she was getting attacked and bitten by an alley dog. Rachel then goes and tells a story about how when she was younger, she locked a special needs kid in a closet in the middle of the woods, and when she was questioned by his family and the police about it, denied any knowing of his whereabouts. Charlie then reveals that when he was 14, he cyberbullied someone so much to the point where the other kid's family had to move away. And these confessions are intense, but ultimately dismissed. They are laughed off and left to the excuse of adolescence or a lack of brain development, as Mike puts it in Charlie's case.
We're 14! Who cares? Your brain doesn't even fully develop until you're 25.
But that shared understanding completely collapses once it's Emma's turn to share, as she reveals that when she was 15, she had planned a shooting at her school. And that, to me, is where this movie really begins. Because what's most interesting about this movie is not just the confession that we were all anticipating to see, but we will get to that when it comes time for Emma's chapter, of course. But rather, the focus of my interest is actually around the reactions to the confession. Because, again, to me, this movie is not about a shocking confession, but rather it's about something a lot more uncomfortable. And that's where we find our limit for extending empathy to someone. What influences who we give humanity to and who we refuse to understand. So let's get into it. So, if we're going to talk about reactions, we need to start with Rachel. Rachel's character casts the true first judgment onto Emma after hearing her confession, and she is ruthless and unforgiving.
I was 15 years old.
Oh, you were 15? So what, does that make it okay? You were 15?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I'm drunk.
Oh, you're drunk. So what does that mean? Are you lying?
She does not seek to understand Emma by any means, and even uses her confession as a reason to be cruel to her. Rachel is Emma's maid of honor, And she takes the opportunity to humiliate her. She interrupts Emma's father during her speech.
He's for selling weapons.
And during her own speech, she takes the opportunity to passive-aggressively condemn Emma, and Charlie too, for being with her.
So when Emma asked me to be her maid of honor, I was a bit surprised. I remember thinking,
Don't you have real friends?
kidding!
To the happy, carefree couple.
And Rachel believes that she is perfectly justified in treating Emma this way, because Emma, to Rachel, becomes her past intention, completely and permanently. And I just want to give my praise a moment to the actress that plays Rachel, Alana Hayam, because she does such a wonderful job at portraying a character that we all absolutely despised. Like, watching this movie really reminded me of how fun it is to go to the theaters to watch movies, because everyone in the audience, in, a very respectful way, were just so vocal and so reactive to Rachel's character. It totally added to the experience. And I could go on with analyzing how insufferable Rachel was as a character, because she is truly an outright bully. Like, she relishes in putting others down just to make herself feel the taddest bit above.
It's endearing.
Yeah, but you want to look good. Crying makes you look kind of ugly.
But what makes Rachel an interesting character to me is not the fact that she's cruel. It's the fact that she's familiar. The drama was designed to be a movie that creates conversation. Every character and every dynamic between those characters was designed very intentionally to resonate with audiences and create some kind of discourse. And Rachel's character, I think, acts very strongly as a mirror for us when confronted with something like moral ambiguity. I think her response actually reflects a tendency that a lot of us do have. And that is when we find someone who has done something that we consider to be uncomfortable, unforgivable, incomprehensible, we kind of all of a sudden stop seeing that person as the obviously complex human being that they are. We reduce them, kind of. And that reduction does something very important. Because if someone is only that awful thing, well then we don't quite have to engage with their humanity then. We don't have to think about the whys and hows about them, and we most certainly do not have to sit in the discomfort of trying to understand them. Because what's the point in that? What else is there to understand about them if all they are is that awful action or intention? And when we do that, we turn them then, therefore, into the other. Not a nuanced, complex, trying to be better folk like you and me, but no, something else, something not like us, and therefore not deserving what we feel we deserve. And I find that this process of creating a binary over what's good and what's bad is really embedded in how a lot of people construct moral hierarchies. Hierarchies that give way to very flawed and very harmful systems in our society. One place you can see it very clearly in American society is with our prison systems. At its core, it operates on a system of retribution. Those that commit acts that are deemed illegal in our laws ought to be isolated and punished in order to achieve societal justice. And that kind of system really prospers when we believe that those people are their actions and nothing else. And maybe you're thinking, all right, Lornology, I see your point. These people are not only their worst actions, but still they did a harmful, wrong thing. And severely punishing them for it is a way to deter harmful and wrong behaviors. And To you, hypothetical viewer saying that right now, you are really getting me at what is my core problem with this kind of system. To quote the amazing movie The Big Short, with my own little flair added to it.
What bothers me isn't that
The American prison system
is not nice or that
The American prison system
is mean. It's that for 15,000 years,
The American prison system
and short-sighted thinking have never ever worked.
Systems built on punishment and vengeance over rehabilitation do not reduce harm. They actually reproduce it. People that enter our prison systems very often leave much worse off than they ever were when they first came in. They leave with fewer resources, fewer opportunities, and a permanent record that follows them everywhere. And that permanent record makes it incredibly hard to reintegrate. It closes people off from sectors of employment, housing, travel, voting, serving on juries, from professional licensing, from child custody. And guess what? Socioeconomic status is one of the top correlators to committing crimes. That and being a man, but that is another conversation. So when you take every resource someone could have for economic mobility, maybe it's a different conversation of what's right and what's wrong, but are you surprised that they would then turn to criminal activity? And therefore, are you surprised that they would reproduce the harm that criminal activity can cause? And that's just the material, because very often many of the people that leave these prisons are left mentally destroyed after experiencing so much physical and psychological abuse from untrained and power-seeking guards, as well as fellow inmates. They turn to substance abuse and become addicts in prison, sometimes buy drugs that are literally brought into the prison by prison guards. If you want to learn more about how corrupt our prison systems are, I highly recommend the Oscar-nominated documentary, The Alabama Solution. Also, the Department of Corrections doesn't even prioritize figuring out the why of what led someone to want to commit the crimes that they did. Something that, wouldn't only be incredibly beneficial to helping someone not reoffend, but could actually help us tap into the mind of someone who is thinking about doing their first offense. Someone like Emma. But Rachel does not care about that in regards to Emma. She wants to punish her for even thinking about doing something immoral. I know that Rachel's the kind of person that would want to lock someone up and throw away the key just to make herself feel a tad more morally superior. And that is what is so interesting about her to me, how we can simultaneously despise her and subscribe to her ideologies without even recognizing it. Because once someone becomes the other, well, their suffering stops seeming like a flaw or an error in the system and starts more just looking like a consequence that, well, they just deserve. And that's what Rachel represents to me. Not just cruelty, but actually a very common, functional way of thinking. A way of thinking that trades understanding for certainty and empathy for a false moral superiority.
It's like stressed about the wedding and stuff. Like, I'm sorry.
So Rachel's reaction isn't all that difficult to understand. She is loud and very certain about it.
Emma, what the fuck?
Emma thought of doing bad thing. Emma bad. End of discussion. And I think that this is a great place to bring in Charlie's character, because I find that his reaction to the situation is kind of opposite to Rachel's, in the sense that he's very uncertain. His first reaction is to actually laugh at what he's hearing from Emma.
I plan to bring a weapon to school.
I'd like do a school shooting.
And I don't doubt the disbelief he was feeling within that laughter. Like, he even supposes that she's joking or exaggerating in some way.
You're joking, like you like fantasize about it, or like.
No, like I.
And when she confirms that she is not joking, he still continues to nervously laugh, and even actually takes a small step into curiosity about the situation.
What weapon?
It's my dad's rifle.
All while Rachel sits very quietly, processing all of this information, processing her disbelief and her horror, and of course by no means engages with even an ounce of curiosity about the situation. But it is when Rachel casts the first true judgment that all laughter from Charlie ceases. Like, there is this tiny little line that I find to be so telling for some reason. Rachel says, "Are you serious?" And Charlie then echoes that by also saying to Emma, "Wait, are you actually serious?"
No, Dad, no. Are you serious?
Wait, wait, are you being serious about this? Is this like a real thing?
But like, bro, we established like a minute ago that she was serious, that she was not joking, so why are you saying that? And I'll tell you right now why he said something like that. It's my theory, at least, that the reason why Charlie said this is because he noticed the judgment that was being cast upon Emma, and when seeing that, slowly started slipping away and growing insecure about how he sees her, and perhaps also how he sees himself for being with and loving someone like her. And I am not out here saying that the only reason why Charlie became conflicted was because of everyone else's reactions. Like, no, it is perfectly normal for someone to be very disturbed and, you know, in disbelief when finding out that their bride-to-be had intended to do a mass shooting. That I'm not saying that, you know, not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying here is that I feel like this movie does a really incredible job at showcasing how the desire to adhere to group morality can be an act of serious disservice to the validity of your own personal morality. You know, that personal morality that kind of helps us see the gray that exists within and around all of us complex humans. Like, I don't know how this would have played out if Emma had confessed something like this to Charlie in private, but I do just find that the knowing judgment that exists from the other characters is really exacerbating Charlie's spiral here. And like, it makes sense in a way. Adhering to group morality can be a very, very powerful thing because it can feel like your social capital is really at stake when you go against it. Something that is very scary for us as social creatures. It's in our biology to associate social acceptance for literal survival. But adhering to group morality can lead to complacency and a lot of harmful thinking, all for the trade-off of, you know, having that security of feeling more in. It creates the desire to conform or seek justification, like Charlie does multiple times throughout this movie. He lies to both Rachel and Mike about the closeness between Emma and an old neighbor of hers who died in a car accident, just to kind of try and get empathy out of the two of them, based on a clear lie.
Didn't you say you had a friend that died when you were younger in a car accident or something?
Yeah, my neighbor.
Were you guys close?
No, not really.
Her friend died when she was young. Who? Her neighbor, who she was extremely close to.
He later on asks his coworker a hypothetical and asks what she would have done if she found out that her boyfriend of 3 years had confessed to planning a school shooting 15 years ago. To which she then replies that she would have called the police, I guess, And also, she says that this is psychopathic behavior. And Charlie tweaks and eventually ends up sobbing, actually. And I find all of this behavior of lying and sobbing to really revolve around his deep uncertainty of not knowing what to do in this situation, not knowing how he should see Emma. Should he see her in the way that he personally sees her, or the way that society sees her? And I find this struggle with Charlie to have a really cool visual representation within this movie. We literally get what I assume to be memories from Charlie's perspective on his past dates with Emma, only now they are memories of dates with him and 15-year-old Emma, which I think is a really cool visual representation of that internal conflict that's going on with Charlie right now, and how he's having a really hard time being able to see Emma as anything but that past intention of hers. And this isn't something that's only experienced by Charlie, but also Emma too. Like, do you remember when I told y'all that every character and every dynamic between characters was intentional? Well, guess what? I was not lying to y'all, because even the wedding DJ has a very titular role in this movie. Before the confession scene, we're given this scene where Charlie and Emma are walking to the wine tasting building. And when they look across the street, what they see is their wedding DJ with a group of other people doing what they presume to be heroin. And this, in a very important way, is brought up at the beginning of the confession scene. It's not only important because it is the conversation that then leads the characters to have the conversation about the worst thing they've ever done, but it is also a really cool showcase to me of Charlie and Emma's worldviews and how it's represented through their initial feelings regarding the matter. Yet it very deeply alternates throughout the course of this movie. Emma and Charlie bring up what they witnessed, and both of them have very differing reactions. While Charlie and the others are pretty certain about their need to find a new wedding DJ.
But wait, what are you gonna do?
I don't know. I think we just get somebody else, I guess.
I don't know. It's not like a deal breaker, right? Like, people do drugs. She's not performing surgery. She's like she's a...
Emma extends grace and empathy to her.
I don't know. I just don't want to like dismiss her because of this one thing.
However, both Charlie and Emma really seem to flip their beliefs after her confession. Emma ends up pushing the need to confront her, even though she had no original intention of exposing her like that. And during the confrontation itself, Charlie ends up breaking down in tears. Even though he had originally been on the side of firing her. And when I see this switch up between the two of them, what I find are two people that have been very deeply impacted by group morality. To me, this reads as Emma feeling very deeply othered by Rachel. And when I see this switch up, I think it revolves around her deep desire to want to be back in, even though it goes against her personal morality that she had expressed just days prior. And for Charlie, what I find is someone who is still very deeply concerned for how if he were to treat someone with this kind of black and white thinking, well then how would that translate to how others would see him for wanting to be with and marrying Emma? Like, if this is perceived to be the right call, defining someone by this and then using that as a reason to not want them to be in your life, well then what is Charlie doing marrying a psychopath?
How does a child even get the idea?
I mean, it wasn't
like an original idea. There's shootings all the time.
I find Emma to be 100% the most fascinating character throughout this movie, because unlike every other character, she is not reacting to the moral dilemma of this film. She is the moral dilemma. And I want to bring up for a moment the casting decision of Zendaya to play Emma, because I find it to be very intentional that she was a mixed woman. There have been a lot of great analyses for the role that race, nationality, and gender play in this movie. Unfortunately, I'm not really going to touch on any of them, but I do want to talk about Emma's identity for a moment, as I do find that to be very relevant for the conversation I want to have here. I think this movie has a really good understanding that we rely very heavily on assumptions when deciding who is and isn't likely of violence. And when most people think about school shooters, something very specific comes to mind: a man. And more specifically, a white man. That stereotype exists for very valid statistical reasons, of course, but it also serves a psychological function to make violence feel more predictable, containable, identifiable. But Emma completely disrupts that comfort, and I think that is exactly the point. Because this movie's answer to what creates violence is very clearly not race, or gender, or any kind of easily identifiable category of evil people. This movie seems a lot more interested in showcasing this as a psychological problem, a human problem. These deeply human emotions that we all very much feel, and if left unaddressed, can mutate into very destructive thinking. And we learn that Emma did experience this. She moved away when she was young, wasn't able to make any new friends at her new school, was bullied and left alone constantly.
We sort of settled down when I was like 7, and I was fine then. I think I had friends and stuff. And then we moved again when I was like 14. Yeah, I didn't make any new friends, and I thought everyone hated me.
And obviously, none of this is an excuse for what she almost did, but I don't think this movie is asking us to excuse her, but rather to just try and understand her. Because if our only response to people who have very violent and destructive thinking is horror and exile, well then all we really do is reinforce silence. Silence that leads to unaddressed pain, which eventually turns into destructive thoughts and actions. Like, okay, we all want people to not want to hurt people, right? Right? Come on, right? And if that's true, well then shouldn't we care about understanding what leads someone into that mindset before the harm actually happens? I think Emma represents the reality that the people we fear, condemn, or refuse to understand are still human beings. And that realization can be absolutely terrifying to people. Because once you acknowledge that, you have a pretty hard time separating the world into good people and monsters. You have to confront the possibility that harm does not come from some inhuman other, but from the same complicated humanity that we all share. And I think the movie's clearest argument for this is Emma's transformation. Because, hey, surprise, what ultimately changes and heals Emma is not humiliation, exile, and punishment, but actually, empathy, community, connection. We are given many flashbacks to Emma's childhood, and specifically during the period where she had intended to commit that shooting. She brought the weapon to school and, from her own admission, had planned to use it. In my opinion, it's kind of left open to interpretation why she didn't go through with the shooting or decided not to, but we do learn that earlier that same day, there was another shooting that happened. One of her peers had died in that shooting, and therefore, the school decided to do grief exercises with the students. During one of the exercises, the students are asked to just walk around the room, look someone in the eye, and try and see if they can feel what the other person is feeling. And Emma ends up locking eyes with one of the girls that had bullied her. And there's kind of this beautiful moment where just acknowledging each other seems to really break Emma apart. And the girl too, actually. Emma starts crying and the two of them hug each other. And I find that scene to be so important because it really reframes Emma entirely as a character. Like, it becomes kind of obvious that Emma isn't inherently monstrous, but rather just someone whose isolation and pain warped into rage until genuine human connection interrupted it. And after a lot of those exercises, Emma is approached by one of her peers and asked if she would like to be part of a student-led organization against gun violence. And she begins organizing anti-gun rallies with other students. She finds community and therefore forms connections, which is why Charlie's response later of
You didn't feel like a fraud?
really bothers me. Because while I also kind of question Emma's sincerity in my first watch of this movie, rewatches of it really helped me to understand what was actually happening with Emma's character. Because Emma wasn't and isn't pretending to be healed. She did heal. She did heal. As she tells Charlie.
No, it felt like finally waking up from a bad dream.
Because Emma isn't written as this secretly evil monster under this socially acceptable mask. She is written as someone who genuinely did change after being given the opportunity to confront her own pain and the humanity of others. She was given a second chance, and she changed because of it. At the opening scene of the film, Charlie first approaches Emma when he sees her in a coffee shop window, and it goes pretty terribly because Emma, who is deaf in one ear, didn't hear him properly.
I was just saying, I'm not hitting on you.
Sorry, what do you mean?
I admire the book.
I'm deaf in this one.
You're deaf?
Yeah. This one, though. I can.
Oh. Yeah.
But then realizing how much he had fumbled, she then asks him,
Do you want to start over? We could just try it again, maybe?
You want to try? Just do it again.
Do it again.
and in the following scene, while Charlie is writing his wedding vows after a little time skip, he says,
I now understand that the only thing that could have saved me was a second first impression.
Yeah, so funny.
and at first it sounds like a cute romantic line. But by the end of the movie, it becomes the thesis. Because after the wedding completely implodes, after Charlie humiliates himself and humiliates Emma in front of everyone, the two of them end up finding each other in a diner that they had planned to go to after the ceremony. And when Charlie starts apologizing, Emma just simply asks him,
Do you live around here?
What?
I feel like I've seen you here before. I'm Emma, by the way. What's your name?
I'm Charlie.
It's nice to meet you, Charlie.
Oh, it's nice to meet you, Emma.
and I think that scene is beautiful because it's not about pretending that what happened never happened. It's about refusing to reduce someone down entirely to it. Do you see what's happened? Emma understands very deeply now the value of a second chance because she herself was given one. And because she was able to heal and change from it, her character is very willing to extend that to others. And that is the beauty of healing and giving people the opportunity to heal, because there is a hope that it will be paid forward. And that is what Emma at her very core represents to me. And I think ultimately that is what this movie is arguing for. That extending grace is not somehow the opposite of accountability, but it may actually be the thing that makes change possible at all. I think the drama begged a rather uncomfortable question out of me. If I believe I deserve to be seen as more than the worst thing that I've ever done, well then, am I willing to extend that belief to other people? And just to be clear, I don't think that this movie is arguing that every action should be forgiven, or that accountability suddenly disappears just because someone suffered, changed, or regretted what they did. But I do think it's asking whether punishment or condemnation is enough to actually make a better world. Whether reducing someone down to the worst thing that they've ever done actually protects anyone. Or if it just makes us feel more comfortable in feeling morally separated from them. Because I think it is easy to preach growth when it's personal, when we're the ones asking for grace, when we're the ones saying, this is not who I am anymore, I'm more than this. But the real test of our values is when someone else is asking for that same humanity. But I think movies like this are very valuable in the sense that they force us to sit in that uncertainty rather than just escaping into binaries. You know, good person, bad person, monster, victim, innocent, evil. Real people are usually a lot harder than that to categorize, which is uncomfortable, but I think very important to acknowledge if we actually care and want to start reducing harm, rather than just reacting to it. So, yeah, that's The Drama, a movie about shame, empathy, punishment, connection, and the terrifying realization that the people we fear most are still people. And I think that is exactly why understanding them matters. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this video and on the drama in general, as I think this movie has created a lot of very interesting and perhaps rather difficult conversations to have, and so I would love to have that with y'all. And I just want to say thanks to so many of y'all for really engaging with my last video. It made me feel really good to see so many people commenting, whether it be praise or respectful disagreement. So I just wanted to say thanks for that. But yeah, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!